Really liking our co-main event this weekend. We have Jeremy Stephens moving up to a division where he once roamed at lightweight, taking on the man himself, Drakkar Klose, a guy that was originally scheduled to be taking on Luis Pena just a few weeks ago, and all of a sudden he thrusts himself into a great opportunity taking on Lil Heathen, Jeremy Stephens. And if you look at the 5-on-in for both these guys, for Drakkar Klose, 3-2, you look at the names, maybe not as big as the names for Jeremy Stephens. Of course, for Stephens, I mean, he was a guy that was taking part in all-timers at 145 pounds. And for Stephens, Jose Aldo, Zabit, Yair Rodriguez, and Calvin Kattar. And listen, nobody liked the fight that Jeremy Stephens had where he's wearing the sunglasses and apologizing for getting eye-raked. It happened. It was very unfortunate. It sucks that it did happen. But in this fight, Jeremy Stephens with the pressure, with the boxing, and Drakkar Klose with his well-rounded game, and sometimes he can wrestle and sometimes he can strike. And if he decides to strike, well, sometimes Beneil Dariush is going to knock his lights out, knock his head into the fourth, I was going to say round, but into the fourth row. So in a fight like this, it makes it incredibly interesting. Drakkar Klose has taken on some strikers, and he's done quite well with them. It's just, can he beat such a big name and a guy that has all the experience as Jeremy Stephens? I love the matchup, quite frankly.
I think this is a very, very fun fight. With Jeremy Stephens, you just kind of know that going into one of his fights. He loves to just move forward, not be sound defensively, and throw a bunch of bombs. And that's something I can get behind as an MMA fan. Now, for Drakkar Klose, the more technical out of these two guys, I don't think I'm telling anybody something they don't know. For Klose, it is interesting because I think of him as more of a boxer. He will throw a few kicks, good calf kicks. He doesn't throw enough of them, though, and that is one thing about Drakkar Klose's game that I do think he could improve on. He is a fighter who, it's weird what range he stands at, because he stands at kind of a longer range than you would expect for a primary boxer to stand at, and he can get eaten up with leg kicks at that range. Just one thing about Drakkar Klose's game that I'm not thrilled with, but he's great at counter-striking. He is really good at staying technical in the pocket, and I'm going to compare him a little bit to Calvin Kattar, the last opponent that Jeremy Stephens, of course, got knocked out by, but Klose can replicate some of the things Calvin Kattar can do. Now, does he have the power Kattar does? No. Does he have sort of the speed, or at least hand speed of Calvin Kattar? No. I would say his ability to counter is about on par with Calvin Kattar's, though. I really do like the fact that Drakkar Klose does one thing well. He's got a great pullback, too. It's something that Conor McGregor, people love talking about him for, because what's he really good at? Gets out of the way, counters you with a straight shot. Drakkar Klose has that down. Now, of course, the best example of that had to be in a loss against Beneil Dariush, but what does he do in that fight? Against one of the best fighters in the world, he's able to counter a jab, crack him with a right hand, and you think, wow, Beneil's on his way out of this fight. Now, we're not going to mention the overhand left and the 5 other strikes Beneil landed, but still, Drakkar Klose has decent power in his hands. I wouldn't say great power by any means, and that's why I think this is a very fun fight. We have two guys known for their durability, although they have been finished. They are two very durable fighters who can keep a very hard and high output throughout 3 rounds, and that's why this should be a really fun fight. For Stephens, though, it will be interesting, because at 145, he's been kind of the brute in a lot of his fights. He's been able to be the guy who can just walk forward, kind of bully guys up against the cage and throw a lot of power at them. Look at his past wins. The Head and Brow fight's one that comes to mind. Now, yes, Brow is a little bit smaller, but he was just coming off being champ at 135, and Jeremy Stephens beat the brakes off of him. Go back to the Gilbert Melendez fight. It was the leg kicks for the story of that fight. The Duo Choi fight, he looked good in, but he gets cracked. And that's the thing with Jeremy Stephens. It's not a Jeremy Stephens fight until he gets cracked, gets hurt, and then it becomes the real fight. Then he really starts to put pressure on his opponents. And even just go back to the Josh Emmett fight. Now, you got to talk to Josh Emmett after that fight, and he detailed some of the injuries he was dealing with after the fight against Jeremy Stephens. Jeremy Stephens put it on Josh Emmett like few people have. That was a very hard finish to watch, and that's the thing about Jeremy Stephens. Yes, he's at a bit of a downturn in his career, and yes, you might not think that this is the most dangerous fighter that you could be in there with, but when you're fighting, Jeremy Stephens is always that one shot away from being able to knock you out. That's the fun thing about a Jeremy Stephens fight.
Jeremy Stephens hasn't won a fight in over 3 years. That's insane. I mean, again, Aldo, Magomed Sharipov, Yair, and then Calvin Kattar. And again, the year fights, you had what? Less than a month between them. They were both main events. The second one was a 3-round main event. The first one was supposed to be 5. It was weird stuff. And he was booked against Kattar earlier, and then they had to book it a little bit later. He was booked against Arnold Allen. That was supposed to happen back in November. That one didn't happen. Stephens was hurt. So now he comes into this fight with Drakkar Klose up a weight class. Now, he did miss weight in the Calvin Kattar fight by a lot.
And Calvin Kattar was very upset about it and really wanted to go off on him. That one of the most unintentionally hilarious post-fight interviews, because Calvin Kattar's walking over to Joe Rogan to talk into the mic, and then all of a sudden they Jeremy Stephens comes up and hugs him, and he's like, man, you're really good. And Calvin Kattar, the first thing he says, he's like, I really wanted to get on the mic and rip him apart for missing weight, but, like, I guess he's cool, so we're good now. But it is weird, because we've seen Jeremy Stephens in there with similar fighters to Drakkar Klose. Now, I do say that, but there is a bit of a caveat. When you've been fighting as long as Jeremy Stephens, you're going to see guys of every style. And that is the one thing Jeremy Stephens has the edge in over Drakkar Klose. He has experience like few other guys in the UFC. Jeremy Stephens has a record in the UFC that no one wants to be known for, but he is the one who owns it. He has the most losses in UFC history. Not really a record you want to be known for, but he's just been around for a long time. And I kind of call it the Matt Brown effect, because people are like, why do you like Matt Brown so much? His record's terrible. When you fought the best guys for 10 years, your record is not going to be pristine. You're going to have your lumps. And I do think that has been the case with Jeremy Stephens. Losing to Max Holloway, Frankie Edgar, and Jose Aldo, who cares? That's going to happen if you're around the division for long enough. The only thing that is concerning, though, is that in this last little losing streak of Jeremy Stephens, he accepts damage and he gets hurt by shots like he wasn't getting hurt by earlier on in his career. We've seen Jeremy Stephens get knocked down, I would say, earlier on in his career. I know the Eve Edwards knocked him out early on, but still. We've seen him get hurt to the body, hurt to the head, but he wasn't getting finished by those techniques. Then you go to the Aldo fight. Aldo hits him with two of the most vicious body shots I've ever seen in UFC history, finishes him. Yair Rodriguez, yes, it goes to the decision. Yair drops with a body kick. And then go to the Calvin Kattar fight. Yes, he broke Calvin Kattar's nose, but what was the last shot in that? He gets hit by an elbow, dropped, and then finished on the ground. The one thing that is concerning, at least in this stage of Jeremy Stephens' career, is he fights in the same way. He just can't take the damage the same way he was able to in his earlier UFC tenure.
So, for Drakkar Klose, biggest fight so far, Bobby Green, maybe? Like, that's really it. I mean, Lando Venata... Beneil Dariush, I guess, but it's a loss. It's really weird when you look at the wins. Mark Jacasey, he was undefeated at the time. That could be it, but it's really tricky to try and even pick one out. He lost to David Tamor. Watch your underwears. And then you look at this fight. He had Jai Herbert originally scheduled. Herbert's got a big fight coming up. He had Luis Pena. Now he gets Jeremy Stephens. This is the biggest fight. Win or lose, I mean, Beneil Dariush, again, it was an interesting fight. It's a lot of fun if you want to go back and watch it, but he got finished in impressive fashion. That was early last year. He's had over a year to kind of take his lumps and get back and work with the team at Fight Ready MMA. Great team over there. We talked about them. They've had plenty of fighters on this card, but Santino DeFranco and crew, Eric Albarracin, if he's over there, maybe get the Cejudos of the world.
Could.
The Pitbull brothers, all sorts of great training partners. And for Jeremy Stephens, he's been at Alliance jump. He's been there forever.
Long time.
Dominic Cruz in the corner. Even lower weight class, but we'll get to that. Jeremy Stephens open to -110. He's -126 or thereabouts. For Drakkar Klose, open to -110. He's at a +103. The money has come in on Jeremy Stephens. If we look at the picks, over on Topology, 1,072 of them. 43% with Stephens, 68% of them have him to win by knockout, 57% of fans have Klose, 79% by decision. So it's either Stephens finishes Klose or Klose just grinds out a decision win here.
It's interesting because I really can see it going either way. If I'm just the honest opinion, I could see Jeremy Stephens getting close back up against the cage, starting to land a lot of those low calf kicks like we know Stephens can, and then answering with power up top by throwing those big overhands and hooks like we know Jeremy Stephens can. The one thing about Klose, he's great at keeping range. He doesn't have that high of an output. Now, I am going to pick Drakkar Klose. That is my official prediction. But I'm going to warn everyone about one thing. It could be a split decision that he wins. And I only say that because Drakkar Klose, he's a very good striker. He's a very technical striker. And when you look at his highlights, it is him being aggressive. And a lot of his fights, he will just kind of stand on the outside and kind of wait for his opponent to throw. And then once they make their initial move, then he will react to it. So I can warn people, this might be a slightly boring fight than where our expectations are, but I am going to ever so slightly picture Drakkar Klose. I think the range will give Stephens problems, and if Stephens does try to rush his way on the inside, I do think Klose can catch him with a counter shot. Maybe not put him down, but we have seen Stephens susceptible to shots in the past. He might be able to hurt him with one of those shots, and then from there on, just pick him apart from the outside. So I'm going to pick Drakkar Klose.
It's a really tricky one because, again, there's so many miles on Stephens, and there isn't on Klose. Klose is coming off a really, really bad loss, but it's been over a year. And same can be said just about for Jeremy Stephens. It's almost been a year since that fight against Kattar. He had the injury that really kind of took him out and sidelined him. He was supposed to take on Arnold Allen back in November. So all of a sudden he comes into this fight up a weight class, and that's weird because you're supposed to take on Allen at 45, and now you're at 55 against Drakkar Klose. Why? Why from November to now are we making that move? It's just going to be interesting to see because for Jeremy Stephens at 55, you look at some of the fights. Pettis, Cerrone,
RDA knocked out.
Danny Downs, He finished RDA, so there is
That was 10 years ago, though.
But that's the other thing. It was 10 years ago. I think it's a right step, especially for a guy like Stevens at this point. He's going to come in here, 34, almost 35. So we'll see which Jeremy Stevens we get. It's a tricky one to pick, and you bring that up too. So I am ever so slightly going to go with the pressure of Drakkar Klose. I like him on the outside. I like the counter shots for Stevens. He can push a really good pace, and if he cracks Klose, he could really hurt him and finish him. So if you do like Stevens, yeah, most likely by finish. And if you like Klose, most likely by decision. I agree. So I do like Klose by decision in this one. I'm ever so slightly going to go with the underdog here, and I'm going to pick the younger, not by much, Drakkar Klose to get the win. It's an interesting fight, though.
Hopefully we do get this at its best version where it is Jeremy Stevens marching down Drakkar Klose and Klose trying to land counter shots. That would be this fight at its best version, so hopefully that is what we get. But no, I agree. I'm expecting Klose to win probably by decision, but it should be a very entertaining fight.
Love the fight. Both going with fight ready, Drakkar Klose and Matt. We have a great main event on tap. You're not going to want to miss it. Robert Whittaker's take on Kelvin Gastelum. Just keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, and as we always say,
Let's get into it.